Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our NACADA virtual town hall today. This is town hall 4 of 5. Finding your NACADA major, taking your next steps in the organization is the topic of our town hall today. My name's Brody Broshears. I'm a member of the board here with NACADA, and we are super excited to have you here today to talk about this topic. We've got some moderators and panelists that we need to introduce, and I think at this point we'll go ahead and do that. Like I said, my name's Brody Broshears. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Academic Success at the University of Southern Indiana. If I want to have the rest of my moderators and panelists introduce themselves by way of the order on the screen, I'd appreciate that.
Aloha everyone, I'm Megumi Makino Kanehiro, and I'm the Director of the Manoa Advising Center and Advising Office for Exploratory Students at the University of Hawaii at Manoa.
Hi everyone, my name is Kerry Kincannon. I'm the Director of the University Exploratory Studies Program at Oregon State University.
Hi everyone, I'm Nancy Rodruck, Assistant Director for Academic Advising at Kent State University and the College of the Arts, and I'm a current board member.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Lotson Nibbs and I'm at Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers, Florida, and I'm the lead academic advisor for Team Natural Sciences.
And my name is Rebecca Hapes. I am at Texas A&M University and I'm a current council member.
Thank you, gang. So for those of you who've been with us before, this agenda won't look very different, but if you're new to our format, obviously we just did some welcome introductions. The way this works is we're going to provide a brief overview of that topic today, finding your NACADA major. We want to make sure that folks understand how that connects to our strategic goals. We do have a brief panel presentation, and then we open it up primarily to questions and comments from the membership. We do this a couple of different ways. It's done via the Zoom question and answer tab that's at the bottom of your screen if you're joining us. Here in just a second, we'll also have a Google form where folks, if you don't ask questions of us today in that Q&A section of the Zoom function, you can still ask us questions or make comments using that Google form that'll be up here in just a second. We do a little bit of a wrap up and next steps and really just have an ongoing conversation about our involvement with NACADA. If we want to move to the next slide, Michelle, that'd be great. So as you can see here, this is the 4th of our 5th web event as it relates to the virtual town halls. We'll have another web event closer to our annual conference in September and October. But today we're really focused in on finding your NACADA major and taking the next steps that you can in the organization, right? This is really about you. How do we take advantage of the professional development opportunities that NACADA provides and that can support the work that you do with student success? You'll see on the bottom of this slide that Google form, and I just want to make sure folks are aware of that and you can access that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Kerry. He's going to talk a little bit about the strategic goals and get us moving towards our panelist presentation.
Thanks, Brody. So yeah, absolutely. Anytime we have a town hall, we really like to draw your attention back to our strategic goals and think a bit about how the topic relates specifically to some of our goals here. And so there's a couple that we want to connect to today. You'll see number 5 there, which is to develop and sustain effective association leadership. Often as members engage with their NACADA major and get connected with their community, that leads to leadership opportunities within the association, and we have a vested interest in that because that helps perpetuate our organization. And perhaps even more importantly, strategic goal number 2, provide professional development opportunities that are responsive to the needs of advisors and advising administrators. Very often your NACADA major and where you choose to engage with the organization is deeply connected to the work that you do on your campus, and you're investing yourself in improving so you can serve students on your campus and work towards student success for them. So we think we've got a couple of goals that we're connected with today. We have some rationale behind what we're doing as well with this particular topic. Members are the lifeblood of NACADA, and We know that this organization is incredibly diverse. It has many branches, and you know, a key component of our organizational sustainability is that you as members find an outlet for your interests. We have targeted first-year experience opportunities as members come on board. If you've been to an annual conference or a regional conference, you know we have a new member orientation there. But much like undergraduate students at our organization, as they progress, we want our members to take their next steps and form deeper levels of affinity with the organization and, in a sense, find the NACADA major. So that's what we're going to do here today, is to dialogue a bit about this concept of finding your NACADA major. We have a couple of learning outcomes here. Give you a chance to hear perspectives from our panel, current NACADA leaders, on strategies for taking the next steps in the organization, and then give you a chance to ask questions or make comments via that Q&A function. Just want to reiterate that again, down at the bottom of the screen that you see now that's framing the slides. There's a Q&A button. At any point during our presentation today, you're welcome to submit a question. When we get to the end, we'll have a substantial Q&A section where Megumi's going to moderate and pose some of these questions to the leaders who are on the panel today. And then let's go ahead and jump in and talk a bit more about this topic. So here's our inspiration for this. Many of you know Dr. Jennifer Jocelyn, who's NACADA's Associate Director for Content Development. Jennifer's also a past president of the organization, and in the speech that launched her presidential year, she charged members of the organization with this mantra: get a major, get a mentor, and get a movin'. And so we're using that today to launch this conversation, to think about how can you get a major, how can you get a mentor, and how can you get moving in the organization. So with that, we've actually asked our panelists today to think about their NACADA journey in light of that mantra, in light of how, you know, in terms of their second year experience and beyond, how they found their NACADA major and who played a role in that along the way and how they've moved through the organization. So we're going to give them a chance to talk to you a bit, and we're going to start with Nancy.
Thank you, Carrie. I have been part of NACADA since 2000, and it started with my first mentor, Dr. Carla Mugler at the University of Akron, who encouraged me to not only attend NACADA events, but to become active. And through her support and guidance, I volunteered originally at the Administrators Advising Administration Commission. Back then we were called commissions, and I got to know Cindy Eiton and then Janet Spence, who were the chairs of that commission at the time, and served on their steering committees. And so volunteering is where I first began, and got to know people, and was thrilled that everybody was so warm, and you can find a mentor just by talking to people throughout NACADA. I went on to be elected chair of the Advising Administration Commission, and served there, and then also moved on to, I was elected Ohio rep for the Region 5 and served in the regions, and kind of shifted my focus to the region side of the house. Served as chair and was under, was tutored by like George and Peg Steele and Eric White and Dan King and Deb Dodder, and all of them are good friends and willing to help all of us to achieve and to do well in NACADA. And then after my stint as region chair, I ran for and was elected one of the directors on the board. So as I look back on my NACADA time, and there's lots of other opportunities. I've had wonderful times to present with people regionally and nationally, and also to mentor others, like in ELP with my mentee, Yvette Barbosa, and served as Summer Institute faculty, But a lot of it, I think I've been very fortunate in that I felt like I made good friends and had lots of mentors through all of this time. I'm very, very thankful. NACADA has made a huge difference in my professional career and just in my personal satisfaction.
Thank you, Nancy. So I think we're going to move to Rebecca and have you talk about your journey a bit.
Sure. So my journey began kind of in 2006. That was my first NACADA annual conference. And I, at the time, was really fortunate to have a department head who was very supportive. I understand that I am very blessed in that respect to have supervisors who have always supported my journey in this association. But he told me, I'm going to give you one gimme year. He said, I'm going to let you go 1 year just as an attendee, but after that, you need to be presenting. And so I sort of jumped in with presentations. And for those of you who know me, I don't really do anything small. And so the next year I thought, but what if this one proposal doesn't get accepted? And so I ended up submitting several proposals. And I guess fortunately for me, multiple proposals got accepted. And so that next year, I ended up presenting 3 different proposals, like 3 different presentations, 2 of which earned commission-sponsored designations that next year. So I kind of hit the ground running with presentations. I really enjoy doing that. And so I kind of stayed in my comfort zone for a little while with presenting. And that's okay unless you've got some people like Joanne Huber who start shaking you up and saying, what are you gonna do next? And so I got involved very much with the what is now known as the advising communities, because with those presentations, they were deeply ingrained into the communities in which I was involved, because all of the presentations I was doing related to the work that I was doing back at my home community. It was things I had tried that either worked or really didn't work. And so it's good to discuss those types of things in a global setting so that you can engage with other colleagues and find out, okay, this didn't work on my campus. Have you ever done anything like this before? How did it work on yours? And so having those kind of presentations, I found really beneficial for me, probably why I continue to do it. And so I started to really get engaged in those advising communities. And I took a jump in 2013 as the chair of the advising graduate and professional students. At the time, it was commission. And then I liked the chair role. I mean, I liked it a lot. So I did it again, just with a different commission. And so I came on to the Advisor Training and Development Commission. And so I did 2 chair roles in the same division back to back. So clearly I enjoyed that work. But with the Advisor Training and Development chair came an automatic seat on 2 different groups within the administrative division. And so I kind of spread my wings a little bit because I joined the professional development committee and the webinar advisory board. And it was really my first foray into those 2 groups within the administrative division. I always knew it was there. I knew that it did great things for the membership, but I didn't really know how it worked. So actually being a member of those 2 groups gave me amazing insight to the way that those groups worked. The Professional Development Committee went on to work on developing the advisor competencies, and that was a fabulous thing to be involved in. And so that was a great opportunity for me to have that engagement in that other division. Even though that's not really where I got my start, I got a little bit of a taste for a different division. And then I've always kind of popcorned attending regional conferences, not something that I did every year just based on budget, but more recently, my department has been able to send me to the regional conferences. And so in the last year or so, when the conference was a little bit closer to my campus, I had the great idea that I would ask my department head if he minded if I participated a little bit heavier in the regional area by getting involved in the planning committee. Being the supportive individuals that my department is, I was given that opportunity. And so I delved into the regional area by participating in the planning committee for the 2019 regional conference. And so that was a different experience. I had been involved in planning committees for events on campus, but doing something to that scale was completely different. And so I really enjoyed that experience as well. So maybe I've changed majors. If we're going to go with that theme, but my primary major certainly is the advising communities division, since that's where the majority of my work is done. But all of the different experiences, I believe, have helped my students because of all of the information that I've gleaned from the work that I've done. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. So we're going to move to Loxley. Loxley.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My journey, unlike Nancy and Rebecca, I'm proud to say Rebecca is my mentor. I actually came out of the Emerging Leaders Program through NACADA. And as you know, that's the elite part of NACADA. We only 10 people gets in, and it's very competitive. So I started my journey as an academic advisor in 2013 at my institution, but I wasn't deeply involved with NACADA because I was just trying to figure things out. And one of my colleagues talked to me about joining, and I actually went online, I joined it, and started paying attention to a couple of things: conferences, call for proposal. And then in 2015, I wanted to get a little bit more involved, and I volunteered at one of our regional conferences. And actually, I went to the New Advisors Workshop, and I heard a lot about NACADA, what you can do, how you can grow with NACADA, the different things that you can do at NACADA in person or whether you're behind the screens. Well, knowing the kind of person that I am, I'm an introvert, so I decided that I want to get heavily involved. So immediately they had a call for proposal, and I put in a proposal, and it was accepted. And that was my first baptism with NACADA and getting a little bit more involved. And then the call came out for the Emerging Leadership Program, and I applied for that, and I got in. That happened in 2016, but I started off at the regional conferences getting a little bit more involved, and I started just by volunteering. And for those of you who are out there and wondering, how can you get deeply involved? You could start at a regional conference just by volunteering and just doing evaluation form. You can get involved by reading proposal, which is something that I do every year. I read proposal for regional, national, and I haven't gotten a chance to read any international as yet. But if you know me, you've seen me at quite a bit of NACADA events. I've done lots of presentation at the regional level. I've done at what we no longer say national conference, we say annual. I've done presentation at the annual conference, and in a couple of weeks I'll be presenting at the University Hasselt in Belgium because my proposal got accepted. So one of the things when I came into NACADA is I was one of those persons who got in like a student was undeclared, didn't know what their major was going to be until I actually found the ELP, which kind of I've grown with that. I was in the class of 2016. I graduated in 2018. And then I found I didn't find my mentor after graduating. I had my mentor who you just heard from, that was Rebecca. Now I'm on the path now where you get a moving, because I am now the incoming chair for inclusion and engagement for 2019-2021. So I'll be doing quite a bit of work right there. So for those of you who are out there trying to find out how to get involved, you could start off just by following my pathway, where I just got involved from just a regional conference to where I've grown. I am now part of the advising community, and will be serving, as I mentioned, as the chair of the inclusion and engagement. But I didn't just win that position overall. I started off there as one of my focus when we were known as a diversity community. We're now known as inclusion and engagement. So in adhering to the theme that we are at today, I want to tell you and I want to inspire you to, when you get into NACADA, find a major, find your path, find someone to mentor you and grow. So you can, we have, there's lots of different ways you can help NACADA and you can grow with NACADA Professional. And when you get to that level, get it moving. All of the panelists you've heard from today have done work on various different communities, and you can do that too. So that's my story. I found my major, found my mentor, and now I'm spreading my wings and getting it moving. Thank you.
That is excellent, Loxley. Appreciate you sharing your story. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Megumi, and I think we're going to move forward with maybe some Q&A.
So I think if we can move to the next slide. Okay, so just a quick reminder, I know we've already talked about it twice, but we are about to have one final 2019 town hall, and that will be in conjunction with the upcoming conference. But we did want to let you know that you can definitely use our Google Chat link that you can see there. It will be open actually for 3 weeks to gather any comments or feedback you have or questions. So even after the session, or if you're not with us right now and you're watching this later, and you have questions or concerns that you want to bring to our attention, please do use the web events, that link to do so. Okay, so to start us off, we can start with some questions, but we really do want to hear from you because, as we said, this is really for you. So if you can see it in the middle of the center of your screen at the bottom, there is a Q&A button. So if you can click that and just type in your questions, then we'll get started and we'll try to answer as many as we can. If we can't, we will address them later, so thank you so much. We are going to start off with a question that I think all of the panelists and even the moderators can probably answer. So let's start off with, your journey in NACADA has led you to take on a leadership role. What inspired you to do so?
I don't mind taking that one. As I said in my little talk, originally it was my first mentor, Dr. Carla Mugler at the University of Akron. And Carla is extremely active in all of the things that she puts her mind to. That's just her lifestyle. And she gives a great deal. She serves, she works hard, and she encouraged me and encouraged others to also not just join, but give to the association, work hard, be there.
And I will just say my first leadership role was that of the chair for advising graduate and professional students. And I really enjoy working with my grad students. And so for that role, it was, how can I make sure that other individuals who do the work I do have the resources and information at their fingertips so that they can do the best job possible to make sure that their grad students are served in the manner that they need. And so for me, it was all about helping other people do the best job possible. And that's kind of the crux of everything I do, is how can I help make sure that my colleagues have the information that they need to serve their students the best way possible.
Yeah, if I could just add something, Megumi, I think for me, right, the work that I was doing on my home campus really was my inspiration to getting involved, right? So, you know, I started by presenting on topics that were important to the success of my work with undecided students, right? So evaluating our system, whether or not it was working, thinking about how do we utilize peer advisors in that regard. So the first couple of times that I really decided to volunteer or to get involved, it was really about connecting to the work that I was doing back on my campus. I can't stress that enough. When we talk about that involvement, I think sometimes we forget about that portion of it and how important professional development that NACADA provides can lend itself back to our productivity as employees at our home institutions. And so those were the things that kind of inspired me initially. And I found the easiest way to do that was to present and to be involved regionally, right? I wasn't always able to go to the annual conference early on in my involvement. So then connecting with people in Illinois, connecting with people in Indiana, connecting with people in Iowa at the places where I was, that seemed to happen the best through those regional conference attendances and then volunteering in those areas. And from a mentor perspective, I guess I would just say I found mentors at every stage, right? Lots of different folks. And I think NACADA lends itself to that from my perspective too.
And Loxley or Carrie, would you like to jump in as well?
Let me jump in. One of the things that inspired me as far as taking on a leadership role with NACADA, I've done so much within the short time that I've become an active member. And I felt that after leaving the ELP, which has equipped me with so many different things, helped me to grow professionally as a person and professionally, it has helped me so much. And I feel that one of the things that I wanted to do was to inspire people who look like myself, because I've always heard people say that NACADA, they go and it's only one set of people are involved. And I wanted to show that, hey, here's a face who got there from not someone giving me a pat on the back, but from my involvement. We're going to conferences. I've gone to all the regional conferences for Region 4 since 2015, and I've presented at every one. And each time I would go, I would say to people, get involved. And they're, I'd hear arguments. People would say, oh, no, you need a pat on the back. And I said, no, I didn't get a pat on the back. I came through the Emerging Leadership Program, and I learned so much from that. And I still want to grow more with this this association. So when I decided to run for the chair for inclusion and engagement, it's not because of a popularity kind of contest. I figure that there's a lot of work that we need to do as an association, right, to get people more included, to get people more involved, and to help us grow overall as an association. So those are the things that kind of inspired me why I wanted to take on a leadership role, because I feel that I can make a difference as a man of color.
I was lucky to get to attend the Region 4 conference this year, so I got to watch Loxley present, so I can attest to the wonderful work that he's doing. So one of my first sort of association level committees was I was a reader for the awards committee, and got to eventually be on the oversight committee for awards, and eventually became the chair. And being a chair, I got to sit in on administrative division meetings, and I was really just fascinated with the kind of the inner workings behind the scenes. But I found that being a leader brought another level of community to me that I wasn't expecting. Some of my closest friends in the association, some of whom I'm looking at right now, are folks who I've met at leadership tables, right? People who I've happened to, have meals with and deep conversations with, and deep thinking about directions that we want to take this association and where we want to go. And I think that's the thing that's kept me going in leadership, is that added layer of community and fellowship that I have with other members.
And I think Carrie is pointing to something really important, which is I think it is important to be persistent. And if you know you want to be involved, as Loxley said, to throw your ring into the hat. That's really important. And sometimes you have to do that repeatedly. Sometimes, you try different things. And so there's different ways of connecting with NACADA and finding your major. So we're going to move on to another question, which again, I think all panelists can answer, but it's basically, what are some benefits about getting involved?
I benefited greatly professionally by getting involved. As I said, I had some fantastic role models and mentors, in Eric White and George and Peg Steele and Dan King and Deb Dotter. I mean, and then friends with so many people. I have been very blessed in that regard. And just as Carrie said, they're more than mentors and professional connections. They become friends. They become dear friends. And, you share personal, you share family, you share hopes and dreams, you share meals, you share laughs. So it's become a family within a professional organization, and it's a wonderful organization. And when you think about the work we do in academic advising and what we are here for to help our students, and so many of them. Of course, it's going to flow over into our friendships and our professional relationships. So it's a great way to move forward in your profession and to become more educated and more well-rounded, and to know things, and to be able to pick up the phone and call someone like Brody or Carrie or something and say, hey, what did you do on this certain area? Or email people and ask for help. You know, the listservs that we have, those are really valuable. You can get a lot of good information from that. So it helped me greatly in my professional career and in my personal satisfaction.
No, Nancy's answer was quite comprehensive, but Brody, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll just say, I always come back to the work, and sometimes it's very small things. I have run the advising administration hot topics session pretty much every year now since 2010, and I can't tell you how helpful that's been back on my own campus, right? So that seems like a small involvement, right? To just moderate a 50-minute session, but the number of administrators that I've been able to interact with and meet, the number of ideas that I've been able to gather, being able to respond to the challenges that advising administrators are facing, right? So sometimes even the smallest piece has been really important. And even so, came up primarily working with undecided and exploratory students as an advisor, and now as an administrator oversee that area. And while I'm involved in that community, right, I don't oversee those areas. The other piece from an involvement perspective has just been getting to sessions that focus in on working with undecided and exploratory students. And I think that's a really important piece of the involvement as well. So finding out who those movers and shakers are, Carrie is deeply involved in that area, and I'm connected to past chairs in the undecided and exploratory sessions. And whenever I get a chance to see sessions connected to those folks, or to respond to listserv information with folks, experts in those areas, I've seen tremendous benefits from that.
And I'd like to just jump in here and say that one of the things that I've learned is I've learned a lot from the listserv, as everyone has mentioned. But one of the things I've learned is my institution is pretty young. We're just about 22 years old, and we're still trying to find new ways of doing things. But I can assure you that when I go to one of these conferences or any kind of gathering for NACADA, you bet I'm bringing back some best practices that we can use in our office to make ourselves better in what we do with our students. The sessions that I've attended, and everyone knows that you go to a NACADA conference and you get the book, you start picking out your sessions, or if you go to the conference, you see people marking off their sessions where they're going to. And what I've done is that I find meaningful things to go to, so I can learn some of those best practices that may be done at Brody's institution, maybe done at Rebecca's institution, and I can take those back to my institution and help our advising division to grow. So for me, I'm not just growing just as a professional, I'm growing as a person, but I'm also helping my institution at the same time to adopt some of the best practices that are out there that they're unaware of, and maybe to bring that back and share with them.
And I would just add that I complete agreement with what everyone has said, but even not everyone's on the same page at the same time with what they're doing. So something at one institution may be a novel idea, but it may be old hat somewhere else. So it's helpful to reach out to people who are doing a program, like I reached out to Megumi just a few months ago, because we're starting something within our department that's old hat for Megumi. And so it was really helpful for me not to have to recreate a wheel that's spinning, just wonderfully at her institution, just because our program has never tried it. And so those kind of connections are really beneficial, because we're not all on the same page. We're not all doing everything at the same time, because every program is at a different life cycle, just because of institutions, the culture, and the program themselves. So those kind of connections are just invaluable that you can make with your interaction with this organization.
And it's kind of the ripple effect, because based on what Rebecca just said, I mean, her questions actually sparked new ideas for me. And so I was really happy that she reached out. And that's an example of how, you know, you can be at your own institution and you can feel maybe sometimes a little siloed, but then when somebody reaches out, then it sparks all these other ideas and all these other connections, which is wonderful. So Carrie, would you like to jump in, or shall I move to the next question?
You can go ahead and move forward. We got some good questions coming in, so I want to make sure we get to
Sure.
them.
Okay, so our next question is from Dee Whitney. What are some of your upcoming goals in your positions, and does it involve any collaboration across other advising communities?
This is a really good question. I you know, think about that from the board perspective. You know, 4 of us are on the board here, and we I said at the beginning, we always try to tie these town halls to the strategic goals, right? And the strategic goals are really kind of a compass for the board. That's the thing that we're constantly working on in terms of thinking about what are our benchmarks, what are our measurements to make sure that we're moving forward with strategic goals. And I can tell you from recent board meetings that a lot of our discussions have revolved around how do we deploy and utilize the infrastructure of NACADA, the different committees and advisory boards and communities and sort of collective brain that we have out there to help us move these strategic goals forward. And so there's definitely that ongoing collaboration that happens across the different I'm going to use the term communities broadly, whether it's the actual advising communities or whether it's committees, advisory boards, regions, and so on. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Well, my current position is interesting because I'm representing all of the communities. So, we'll continue to represent the needs of all of the communities. So I don't know if that's deemed in particular collaboration across all of the communities, but certainly any of the needs of the advising communities, we will work to represent that to the council. And we have a number of them that have come forward as potential advising communities. So we are very interested in what the members are interested in doing. And so that actually comes forward with potential advising communities, and there's an entire process for what that looks like. So we'll continue to monitor those types of things as they come forward as well.
And there's a related question that came in, Rebecca, maybe you could answer, from Christina. If you are interested in a community, how do you start that process? Do you contact the current chair? Is there an application? What about the deadline?
Okay, I'll go backwards and start kind of at the beginning. When individuals complete their membership or their renewal, they have the opportunity to select up to 4 advising communities as part of their membership, and that allows voting privileges within those advising communities. So I would recommend to go to the My NACADA site or your NACADA site and make sure that you're logging in and that your membership is representative of the 4 groups that you are wanting to be involved in. And anyone can modify that membership at any time. So you want to maybe, check on that periodically and make sure that your membership is reflective of the work that you are doing on your campus or the work that you would like to be involved in NACADA. And then from there, your membership actually gets you access to the membership listserv. And I will make that distinction because there is both a membership listserv and then there is an advising communities listserv. Now, with the advising communities listserv, you'll want to go to the NACADA website and sign yourself up for that particular listserv. That part is not an automatic process. And the reason that we do that is because you can actually sign yourself up for as many of the advising community listservs as you're interested in. So you have voting privileges for 4 advising communities, but you can participate in as many of the advising communities as you're interested in via their listserv and any of their social media pages. And so that's one way to actually get started. And then there is chair information available on the NACADA website. So certainly if you want to get involved more deeply beyond listservs and social media pages, you are welcome to reach out to the chairs of those particular groups and express your interest. All of the advising communities have a steering committee. And so that is one way that you could potentially get involved. I'm not going to say for sure because some of them do have an application process for their steering committee members. So you can certainly discuss those opportunities with the chair of each of those advising community groups. But there are plenty of ways to get involved. But going back to the beginning, make sure that your membership in your 4 is appropriate for what it is that you're wanting to do, because that does give you voting privileges.
Thank you, Rebecca, for the very comprehensive answer. We're going to actually go back to the question regarding upcoming goals, and also does it involve any collaboration across other advising communities? And I'm going to shoot it over to Brody.
So yeah, I kind of wanted to speak not about my path in particular, but my time on the board is coming to an end, and certainly that could be a time to step away and not be involved in the association at all. But I think about this a little bit differently, right? And from our involvement perspective, there's always a what's next, or and maybe I've moved to a space where it's now what do I want to do, not what do I have to do, right? We have responsibilities as a board, but I've been very excited about going back to Indiana, and recently within Region 5, for example, our state associations and province associations have been very active, but Indiana has struggled to get their association off the ground. And so I think about the role that I've played within NACADA and the kinds of things that I can do more locally, right? So stepping back and getting closer to home and finding ways to use the success I've had in my involvements in NACADA at the broadest levels, and as a member of the as a region chair, as a council member, as a board member, and now taking that success and going back to the grassroots locally and saying, how can we improve the professional developments and the student success initiatives in the state of Indiana, right? So to me, those are the kinds of collaborations that are really exciting. And then staying involved in those areas that help me do my job better, right? So as an advising administrator, using the strengths that I've developed in that role and helping other administrators. And so while I don't automatically think about specific communities per se within the association, I am thinking about communities as it relates to the overall work. And I think that's another distinction that from an involvement perspective, I would think members would want to tie into.
I was going to jump in here and maybe put Loxley on the spot here a bit, and really thinking about, as you come into the inclusion and engagement, what's the landscape looking like for you in terms of that important committee and that group as the organization moves forward?
Thank you, Carrie, for asking that, because I really wanted to chime in here, because when Brody spoke just now, you keep hearing the word inclusion, included, involvement. One of my platform statements when I ran for the position was, we want to make people feel engaged. We want to make people feel involved with NACADA. We don't want people to come to events, NACADA-sponsored event, and feel like they pay their memberships or their subscription and they don't get to partake in anything. One of the biggest tasks for me coming in is that I want people, and when I say people, I want everyone who's a part of or affiliated with NACADA to feel as if they belong to this association. I want to let people feel it's a big task, I know, and I have a wonderful team of people that will be working with me, that if you attend any of our NACADA sponsored event, you will feel engaged and we will make you feel involved. So my biggest task is that we want to get rid of some of the negative connotations that are affiliated with some of the languages that we use. For example, last year at the town hall meeting in Phoenix, there were a couple of people who left there feeling a little bit hurt about certain things. And it's a long story, so I won't go into details here, but that's a big task for me because I was there and I saw what happened. And I want to fix things. I want to win those people back, so their attendance at the NACADA conference will not be their last. So if you, the audience that are listening, when you attend a NACADA event at all, my biggest challenge is that I want you and my team and NACADA to make you feel like you belong to a wonderful association, that you're not just a body paying $75 membership subscription for a year. We want you to feel that there's room for you. There are things that you can do, from not necessarily attending a conference, but you can do things behind the scenes, as I mentioned. If you're good at reading a proposal, we want you to be involved. If you're good at writing a book review, we want you to be involved. If you're good at writing articles for academic advising today, we want you to use your talent, your skills, and your expertise to help us to grow. So my job has a lot of collaborations across the different advising communities, and it's a big task. I already start getting work that I need to start, things that I need to start working on. We've had complaints from people who felt that they had some kind of disability and they attended a conference and they didn't feel that how the room was organized, they didn't feel like they could participate because everyone was around the table and they were in a wheelchair and they couldn't fit. We also want people to make sure so it's a big task. There's a lot of things that we need to fix. Now I have 2 years in this position. Will I fix everything? Absolutely not, but it continues. There are people who are on a part of the Inclusion and Engagement Committee, and I'm picking up off Michelle Smith-Ware is our current chair. I'm the incoming chair. So it's a big task, and there's lots of collaboration, lots of things to fix, lots of things to make people feel engaged and involved. So we're going to be working, I am going to be working on a lot of initiative. And for those who are listening, if you want to be a part of this community at all, please send me an email. Reach out to me. I'm on the website, and that's how I want to let people feel that they're part of the association and to help them to feel engaged and involved.
Thank you, Loxley. So we're going to actually go to Nancy, because I think Nancy had something she wanted to add to what Loxley just said.
I did. Thank you, Megumi. Loxley, you're absolutely right. And we want everybody to feel engaged. And one area that we really could use for people to participate and to get involved are those who have some experience professionally and we need volunteers in ELP. We need people to step forward and be willing to volunteer, new professionals in the field and new folks coming into NACADA. And that would then serve a lot of purposes, that the mentors make a lot of friends and a lot of connections. And then you also are helping the next generation of professionals.
Thank you, Nancy. So it sounds like the panelists are doing a good job because people are now asking the hardcore questions. And so we have Samantha, who is asking the realistic question, which is, as a new member or an interested party, so in other words, I found my major, how much weekly time would you say you need to commit to this avenue?
I can start, and I'm just going to say it depends. So it depends on what it is you're volunteering for. Some of that is very cyclical in nature based on the task at hand. And so several of the panel members and moderators have mentioned reading proposals for various conferences. And that task, while very time intensive during the time in which they're due, is only for that particular duration of time. So if you have 20 proposals to read, it might take you a couple of hours to read and score those proposals during that time frame. But it's a one-time task until you volunteer to do so again. And so it might not take you very long in the grand scheme of things to do it, but it's one time. If you volunteer to be part of maybe Loxley's committee, that's going to be a little bit more time intensive because that's an ongoing work group. It's an ongoing committee that has multiple projects that are going to be taking place over a longer duration of time. And so I think it really depends on what it is that you're interested in getting involved in and what the time commitment is for that particular project. I know when I was chair and I was soliciting for volunteers, I would try to make sure that I would say this particular task, I anticipate it's going to take this long, and I would try to provide those time frames so that people could make decisions based on volunteering, based on an accurate amount of time and their own time commitments in their life. And so I'm hopeful that other individuals who are soliciting for volunteers are doing those types of things as well, so that people volunteering can make an accurate decision based on time commitments. But it really, all kinds of things take varying lengths of time. If you're doing an AAT article, it might take you a while to do the research and actually write it. Loxley and I have been working on one for a little while. We're hoping to get it finished and out of our hands. But it just really depends on how much time you have to commit to the particular activity. So.
I just wanted to jump in here. We've mentioned, thanks to the involvement of Nancy and Rebecca and Loxley in the program, the Emerging Leaders Program, the ELP program, a few times. You know, for like those of you who have been mentors or mentees, I mean, how much time were you investing in that process?
Since I'm unmuted, I can go ahead and start with that. Loxley and I met every other week or so, and we set aside about an hour to have our phone call. We did texting between those times, and we wrote to each other and emailed back and forth. And then when we had projects that were due, we would spend a little bit more time on those particular assignments. But that's the time commitment that he and I had decided on at the onset of our 2-year commitment in that particular program, was that we wanted to meet with each other about every other week. And so that was the time commitment that we set up for us.
And I am mentor to Yvette Barbosa, as I mentioned before. And Yvette and I don't meet as often. We do texting. We will call. But it's basically on an as-needed basis. I do a lot of encouragement. We're also on Facebook, so we do encouragement back and forth. So it's not as structured, but Yvette is extremely busy in her job, and so I don't want it to be a burden. So we just do it on an as-needed basis, and she's doing phenomenally well.
The other thing that I would add, and we haven't really talked about this very much, is maybe the difference that of involvements that really require attendance at some of the conventions and other items where that's not automatically a requirement, right? So most of our elected positions, right, and that's how I've gotten more involved, although I've volunteered even when I haven't won elections and remained active within certain niches of the association. But there are involvements where you do need to probably attend a regional or an annual conference on a regular basis. And you should strategically think about whether or not that's something that you commit to when you volunteer. Oftentimes, I think the association's asking for institutional support. And if you don't have that institutional support and you run and you win, just know that you may be having to cover some of those costs and requirements on your own. But even this idea of, we haven't really talked about elected positions. You know, I tell people there isn't an elected role that I haven't run for and lost, right? I'm like the Abraham Lincoln of NACADA in the sense that I've experienced a lot of failure running for elected positions. And I would share with folks who are here, right, listening, if you've run for an elected position and you haven't won, that's not, in my mind, it's not a reason to stop staying involved and finding ways to get into the association and make contributions. You just might have to think about that differently. And I think that that's important. It can be easy to get frustrated, but from my perspective, continuing to find paths to leadership and talking to people if you've lost elections about different ways to get involved would be one of my big recommendations to folks who've maybe run and lost, or who are considering running but might be afraid that if they lose, that means that's the end of their involvement.
And as someone who's lost their fair share of elections, I would have to agree with you there, Brody. It just means that that's not the role for you at that particular time. And there's another way for you to get involved and engaged within the association and share your talents in a different way.
And there's a related question to what you folks are talking about. So basically, if I follow the suggested mantra of get a major, get a mentor, and get a move-in, and feel the pull towards a leadership role, what advice do you have for me to optimize my chances to get elected or appointed? So besides like trying out for a different role, do people have suggestions on how to approach that?
Well, apparently you need to self-promote, but I'm not very good at that. So there are people who put themselves out there on Facebook that they're running, and those types of things are, that's a part of it. Do the video, that's a part of it. So make sure that you've got a good platform statement and that you let other people know that this is something that you're interested in. So those are all parts of running a good campaign.
Yeah, I think any success I've had is probably attributable to something I tell my students a lot, which is showing up is half the battle. I mean, if you make yourself available to do things and then you get those things done, if you show that you're dependable and you show that you're capable of following through, I think that goes a long way. At least I assume that's how I've got into some of these positions. Folks, you know what? We are at about 4 minutes left, so I think we're going to put a bow on this one and wrap up. For those in attendance, we're very grateful to you for your questions today, very thoughtful, and for the panelists and moderators, thanks so much for being a part of this and sharing your experiences and your wisdom and your journey. In terms of next steps, I think you've heard a couple times that we do have one more virtual town hall that's happening towards the end of the summer as we get close to the annual conference. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. And again, just want to put out there that on the event webpage, which we broadcasted a couple times, and we'll have a follow-up email that goes out next week. There is a link to a Google form where you can chime in with additional comments, questions, thoughts, or anything else that might be helpful to you in getting your major, getting a mentor, and getting moving. So with that, I think we'll call it good. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day.